This episode of Monty's Minute is sponsored by Shutterstock.com. With over 20 million high-quality stock photos, illustrations, vectors, and video clips, Shutterstock helps you take your creative projects to the next level. For 30% off your new account, go to Shutterstock.com and use offer code Gamebreaker6. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Monty's Minute, episode 30 for June 4th, 2013. I'm Gary Gannon. You're watching Gamebreaker TV. Of course, the show where we answer your questions about the video game industry. Joining me, as always, Mr. Monty Sharma. How are you, sir?
I am zazzy today, Gary.
Zazzy. Zazzy.
Yep.
That is a fantastic word. I'm going to use that more often. Zazzy.
It's good.
It is
you
good.
can feel zazzy.
You can feel zazzy. So big news this week. I want to start the show off when you talk about a company that comes up a lot on Monty's Minute is a little company, a little Russian company called Wargaming.net. Make a little game called World of Tanks. It's like 8 gajillion players or something like that. I don't know what the number is at this point. They're also working on World of Warplanes and then taking over the world at some point. Big news this week, though, huh? What are they in the free-to-play world?
Yeah, so they, the last couple of weeks have been busy for them on the PR side. They came out and said, we're going to make a console title. They came out and said, we're going to launch esports, in our games. And they're going the riot path, as it's sort of called in the industry. Of they're not going to do it as part of Major League Gaming or one of these other efforts. They're going to set up their own league, manage it themselves, do broadcast, all of that sort of stuff. So the interesting news this week really was that they looked at it and they said, hey, we are going to change how we're doing free-to-play, and we're going to take out anything that has the sort of pay-to-win element to it. So if you can buy better armor or things that would change your chance to win in the game, we're going to remove that. And in doing so, that's a pretty gutsy step.
That's a really gutsy step, especially when you've got as many players as they already have playing the game in the current model, and now they're just saying, hey, look, guys, we're going to change the entire free-to-play model. I personally think this is a great move for them. It's gutsy. I think it's incredibly smart to remove that. I mean, I think that the title that I saw was something about like Wargaming wages war on pay to win or something like that.
They call it free-to-play 2.0, that sort of thing. The interesting thing, though, is so a guy like me who's got money, not very good, doesn't have a lot of time to play a lot, whenever I start off with something like World of Tanks, get smoked. All right, look, I'm just going to buy a better tank. So that sort of thing will end. And without that, what it does do is the quality of the players and how the players operate, that gets a lot better. And so that's going to be really interesting to see if they can shift the revenue that they're getting for things that give players an advantage to the esports business model. That's huge. That's a real industry impacting event.
Do you think that this is something that, more companies out there going to the free-to-play model really need to look at really, under a microscope? Because I know for a lot of companies, this would be a really risky move. I mean, the good thing is Wargaming, I think, have, gathered a little bit of a stockpile of cash over there at this point, and they have the ability to do something like this.
Right. And, if they, they took this on courageously. A lot of companies would do it just in one jurisdiction for a period of time on certain servers. They went straight out and did it. There's been companies in the past who have said, look, nothing in our game will give you an advantage in playing. The thing with them is none of them have been the size of World of Tanks, and none of them have had already an embedded audience who has been paying for those advantages. So making that transition, customers hate change. Look, I had this thing, it was broken, then you went and fixed it, And while it's better for most people, I don't like the change. Any change they complain about. I haven't seen much backlash about this, but
It's
let's
hard
see
to backlash
how
about
it
this.
goes through.
Especially in the West. And I wonder if that's partially part of their thing. Because I mean, World of Tanks is absolutely enormous in Russia and some other countries. Hasn't really been able to break into the West, I think, like they wanted to. And they're trying. They've been trying for quite a while, and it's popular. I believe there are a lot of players, but nothing like they are there. And I think that this is
the bulk of their revenue from Europe.
Sure, I think this might be one step closer though, because I think that this is I'd say this is a really big turn on for players in the U.S. especially. Like hearing this, I think a lot more players are going to pick this free to play title up now that this is kind of like changed. It's the model, so awesome, gutsy move.
Going to be interesting to see when they launch the sports league how well that works, because that was we talked about it after GDC. That's one of the hot trends this year that everybody was talking about esports. How many of these games can actually turn into a decent esport? Who figures out how to monetize and to balance and to tweak everything you need to have a good sport? That's the next battle.
Maybe Riot should just opening like a consulting firm on the side just to teach other companies how to do it. All right, let's do some viewer questions. First up, this one from RG1 or RGI, I'm not sure, but RG says, I have a small game I am working on, and I am thinking about trying Kickstarter. Do you have any advice?
So, so actually recently, a group I'm involved with at MIT, we just did a panel on crowdsourcing, and one of the companies that we work with at Mass Digi just did a successful Kickstarter campaign. So, Kickstarter's an interesting thing. So the first thing, I'd ask somebody is, how much money do you need to raise? And then if a number comes back and it's, let's say, sub 20,000, if you're not a student, a recent graduate, somebody who's got parents to rely on, a wealthy spouse, raising less than 20,000 is probably not worth the effort. And I'll say it's not worth the effort because it's a substantial, 3 to 6 month prep cycle to get ready to do a good campaign. You're going to use a whole bunch of time to do that. When you put together your, hey, we're going to give this to people who give us so much money, we're going to give this to people who give us so much money, that's another thing. And so, people say close to a third of what you bring in ends up going to just the admin and giving people their perks and all of that sort of thing. So small amounts of money mean you put in the same amount of work. You're putting in months worth of effort, and what you're ending up with is a few $1,000s, not really worth the effort. Now, if you're going bigger, and you're raising, 100,000, 200,000, the advice from all the experts and people who've raised the money is, number one, set your goal below what you really want, to the point of, with this, we could do it not as well as we want to, not with all these things, but at least we could get something going. Because breaking through that 100% threshold matters. And once you break through the 100% threshold, a lot of people who are sitting on the sidelines saying, yeah, it's kind of interesting, but I don't know if these guys are going to go anywhere. I don't know if I'm going to bother to fund it. I mean, I'll be perfectly honest, I fund a few things that I don't think are going to go anywhere, but I just want to let them know I care.
Right, right.
So people will jump in once they see you've broken 100%, and they say, oh, this is hot. We want part of this hot effort. So we're going to jump in and commit money. Once you do that, or, as you start it, all the experts recommend don't go longer than a 30-day campaign. It really doesn't make any difference. And the sort of sign-ups or contributions you're going to get, it's more at the start. So when you first launch it, you've primed the pump, you've talked to all your friends, you've had your social network set up for a while, you've told them this is coming, and so you're going to get a spike, in the first few days of people signing up and contributing. Then you'll get another spike at the end as
Mm-hmm.
people say, oh, wow, this is almost over. Okay, I've been meaning to do it for a long time. Now I'll show up and contribute. So don't let that middle part depress you.
It's going to get a
Keep,
little quiet there. Yeah.
yeah, keep the updates coming, stay in contact with people, and, the recommended setup was, one communication a week. Don't go more than that, and definitely don't go less than that, because as soon as you do, people get nervous, begin wondering, you know, what is this? Are these guys fake? So, you want to be with that.
I would have to imagine, I don't know if there are, but I would imagine it's the internet. So I don't know if you know any off the top of your head, but I would imagine there's also probably maybe some resources of even like blogging about the experience of the from prep to Kickstarter to everything. And I think you should probably do RGs. You should probably do some research on that for sure, and kind of really look into. I don't think there's many. I think there are a lot of people just putting Kickstarters up, not really putting a whole lot of effort into it, and there isn't really a whole lot of prep time. It's kind of they're just like shooting from the hip kind of thing. And I don't know if those are very successful. So I think the ones that are very successful, there is a lot of planning and a lot of prep, like you said. So you might want to go dig and maybe find some, not case studies, but maybe just blogs about like, hey, this is what we did for 3 months. This is what we did for 2 months. Then we kickstarted it. This is sort of what happened. There's probably a lot of info out there right now, and I definitely think you should do your homework.
Yeah, and there's actually a professor at Wharton who just did a paper on, here's all the data from Kickstarter. Because the cool thing about Kickstarter, if you're, trying to understand entrepreneurship or financing, is there's a ton of data. How many were successful? How many failed? What dollar amounts worked? Which ones didn't work? All of those things matter. And if you dig at it, the successful campaigns I know, they did a ton of research before they started. You're bang on, hit the blogs, but also look at some similar projects that went before you, who got funded, who didn't. Throw some money at some projects and see what they're like, how they treat people. All of that stuff's critical to building a good campaign. And the other thing is it's not just Kickstarter. Now, apparently there are hundreds of crowdfunding.
Indiegogo is another one.
Yeah, Indiegogo's great because they have an option that says, take what you get. So I can say I'm trying to raise 100,000. If I make 90,000 on Kickstarter, I will get 0. On Indiegogo, I'd get the 90,000 minus a slightly higher fee that they're going to charge. Now, as long as I can deliver something to the people who got me to 90,000, that's okay. So you got to balance that stuff out. But there's tons of opportunity there, and then there's the one, I guess, massive new thing that we'll throw out there is last year in the Jobs Act, the U.S. Congress passed a new crowdfunding bill, and part of that was here, I'm going to borrow the socks out of everybody. Prior to that, if you wanted to put money into a company was only allowed to solicit money from people who were called qualified investors. So you had a net worth of, over hundreds of thousands of dollars. You could afford to lose the money. You were told clearly that the money you were giving them was probably going to be lost, kind of thing. And you could only do it from a limited number of people. So, and I don't know if there was a hard rule, but the soft rule I kept hearing was about 50 people. So now what they've done is they've said, okay, we want the SEC to come out with rules that let people access smaller amounts of money from people who's the average person, who could be a fan or who could be, just a friend who's going to give you a Kickstarter kind of an amount, and do it in a safe and reasonable way, because the fear is you're going to get 1,000 charlatans popping up and saying that, hey, I've got a new cure for cancer, give me money here, and there's going to be a problem. The beauty of the new model is, if you back something right now on Kickstarter, and I've only gotten one beta of all the things I've backed, so not tremendously happy. But let's say I back something that was a huge success. I'm going to have a little bit of bitterness of, okay, I'm the guy who put up the money that let you be a huge success. Thanks for the T-shirt, but hey, how about a little more? So with the new crowdfunding legislation, you're going to see a bunch of sites that will actually give you a piece of the action. yes, you get a t-shirt now, and this is going to convert over to 5 shares of common stock. Now when it hits, hey, wow, I really have something.
Really own a little piece of this.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. All right, next up, this one in from Graham Wolf. He says, hey there, recently discovered the show from a friend and love it. Thanks you so much for watching, Graham. He says, my question is, what's the best way to develop my skills as a game designer? And what tool is the best to use? Unity, UDK, hard coding, or something else? Thanks a lot, Graham Wolf.
Great. So, I'd ask really what you mean by a game designer. So if you want to be sort of a programmer developer, then yeah, Gary, go hit Unity up, see what you can do with it. Take the Angry Bots demo that they have, start playing around with that, add some complexity, understand those sorts of things. If you have an idea for a game, then start down the path of trying to create that once you've got your feet wet. If you're talking more and more about, I want to be a designer, I want to come up with sort of the concepts behind it, one of the things that I've seen, I know a number of folks do it. One of the indies that we're working with actually did a great concept on putting this together is you can actually create what's called a paper playable. So without coding or anything else, take your game idea, write up the rules, which you need to have anyway before you program, figure out what the pieces are, and then, let's say you've got a battle game that player versus player, I want these squad-based combat, whatever. So look at something like, War Machine, Warhammer, any of those things. Grab a bunch of miniatures, write up your rules, and then play it on a table.
Yep.
I
don't think a lot of people outside of the game industry realize how many even veteran developers and designers are doing that exact same thing to this day. Like it starts literally on tabletop with a group of like 4 or 5 friends and playing the game and seeing if the systems work. It still happens like that. Absolutely. We did a game last year where they had cut up pieces of paper, and you did that, and we kept track of the points you used because you handed in chits. It was like playing Monopoly, but it worked. And then from there, you actually build a spreadsheet. And the spreadsheet has all of the mechanics of what you're doing. And then you can actually check, hey, is this balanced or unbalanced? What happens in a battle between this or this? Does one of my items completely skew the game? All of those sorts of things are going to help you develop a good sense of design and balance. And the neat thing is if you hear sometimes in Asia, they'll reverse engineer servers for MMOs. And what they've done is they've essentially figured out what the spreadsheet is for these games, and they've then turned that into code and become a server. So that's kind of neat. I also saw this thing about there's a Star Wars Galaxies emulator out there. Even though it's shut down. Apparently folks in the know aren't upset about it, but we'll find out more. Yes, they are out there. They are out there. SWG. All right. This next one is from Lee. Lee says, hi, Monty. I am wondering if I may be able to approach a game company to apply as a composer. I have a bachelor's and a master's in music, theory, and composition. I love playing video games when I am not working on my music. It says, while playing, I can't help but study, analyze, and evaluate the music I hear, and I know that I can create music that fits the profiles of games based on their visual character, and most importantly, I can construct the forms to fit the timing constraints and the development of music that must be played cyclically. So he says, I should add that I am an American currently living in Hamburg, Germany. I hope to hear your thoughts on this, and however you suggest I start, I am eager. Thank you, Lee. Haven't heard from any music composers on this show. This is first, I think. Yeah, well, actually, I think the most important thing is if you're in Hamburg, how's the currywurst there? Try it out. Let us know. The folks in Berlin insist theirs is the best, but who knows? That's what we really want to know. Exactly. So there's an interesting thing is composers tend to be generally contract
workers. So you're going to be freelance. If you want a deeper role with a company, you really have to set yourself up as a sound designer. And then as a sound designer, you're doing interface sounds, you're doing the blips and the bleeps, you're doing the groans, the doors, all of that stuff. If you see yourself as, hey, I'm a composer, I can write it, and there is a real trick to writing game music, in that normally a song, you want to have an end to it, the melody, that, it goes in the cycle, it builds up the emotion, and then it lets you go home. In a game, it needs to be cyclical. You got to keep that going. You don't want the ups and downs, because if they happen at a time that it isn't gameplay, it's wrong. If you can come up with a what's the word for it? A programmatic way or a procedural way to add music to a game. So compose something where the game actually changes the music. That would be cool. The way to do it, for a sound designer. So the sound designers, I've met less people in the sound business than I think any other discipline. The guy who sends me an email every 3 or 4 months saying, hey, here's a link to all my music, isn't doing it the right way. I'm not going to listen to his music. I mean, hell, I got Spotify. No, I have no idea who he is or how good it is. I get a bunch of these emails. Why am I going to look at them? And I'm not even a producer. When, so we go back to our network thing. Get out there. There's lots of game events in Germany. There's a number of very good game developers there. Go to Gamescom in Cologne. They're awesome folks. Had a truly wonderful time there. All of those things will help you meet people, but then how do you get them to hear your work, right? Take a look at YouTube. Grab things that you can add a soundtrack to. Create your own channel. Hell, we've got the same opening music that another show has. Send us something, right? Gary does great stuff with film editing, but sound editing has tons of impact in what you can do under a show to make it sound better. Reach out to us, talk to other people like that, and start showcasing your skills. Because being a composer is great. Saying that you understand it is awesome, and we'll take your word for it, but you need to find a way to show it so you can build your portfolio by doing these sorts of things. And then when you meet people, you can say, oh, yeah, look, I do sound for this, this, and this, even though it's volunteer and, it's some little thing. They go, oh, okay, so you're at least somebody. And then, okay, great, we're interested in music. Let us know. Let's talk about this title or that title. We'll give you a contract, and you build from there.
Yeah, I think the YouTube channels. I think that's great advice. Like starting a YouTube channel and utilizing all the other games out there, and composing your own music to them and showcasing it. There you go. There's a sound stage for you right there to get up and start playing your stuff.
And if your stuff really hits, that's awesome. Hey, if you were to send an email to me to say, hey, I did this with your game. I took this video and I redid the sound on it. I took one of your trailers and redid the sound on it. And it got, 2,000 views. It got 50,000 views. Awesome. That's great. If you took my trailer, you redid the sound on it, and you say it's going to sound better, I might actually look at that more than here's a link to my CD.
And this might be another great opportunity to reach out in the creative world and find somebody who's on the visual end who wants to get into video games and do some stuff based around some big top video games, like make some cool, like make up your own trailers or, and things like that. I guess, I think the companies would be okay with that, creating your own stuff. I don't know. It might be a little.
No, they won't have a problem with you creating your own trailer. The only time somebody might complain if you create something that's offensive.
Sure.
And even then, it'll have to be fairly clearly offensive, let's say, because there's a certain amount of backlash in the game industry of, yes, they copied what you're doing, but, you're an idiot for trying to enforce the copyright on that. And, it does you no harm. In the commercial world, completely different. You get a cease and desist, you stop. In games,
I'll throw a dig out, but tell EA that every time we upload something, one of their games to YouTube, you've been flagged for content. We've just stopped completely. People ask all the time why we've stopped like rolling B-roll in shows. There you go. So I think it depends on the game company. You might want to do a little bit of research, but I think it's a great way. YouTube.
They've got more lawyers than brains. Honestly, because if they have a show like you, who's putting out their content and showing it to people, that's what they bloody well want. That's what you spend millions of dollars on PR for.
Well, all right. Since this is the business show, right? We'll talk about the back end of it. I'll tell you that. So what's happening is that companies, some of the larger ones, let's say, the big behemoths, what they're doing is they're basically funding certain YouTube channels with very large amounts of money who don't seem affiliated with them whatsoever, and they are the site, or those are the channels that are disseminating the content out, and that's where they want the views to go as a PR machine. Gamers don't really know that that's happening, and they don't see that, but so they don't want you posting it because they're trying to drive traffic over to the channel because they have a vested interest with advertisers and things like that. So.
And that is true of media everywhere, right? Yep. All of the media is owned by big conglomerates, so I wouldn't doubt they're doing that. Stop it. Support the little guy. Complain about it.
We're like one of the last video game sites I think out there that is not owned by a larger entity. Not that we're not for sale. So. All right, next up from Barry. Barry says, "Hi, I enjoy the show even though I don't want a job in the game industry. My question is, do patents have effect on games? More specifically, game content and features. You read in other industries of the desire to have a war chest of patents. Every new MMO builds on the previous MMOs. When a new MMO comes out, we are disappointed if they don't take the best features from the past MMOs. Is there anything hindering this? P.S. For the pick next to my name, I would prefer a baby hippo. The angrier, the better." Barry.
There we go. So this actually is another one of my passions, and probably explains why I didn't date very much in high school. The patent system is fascinating. It has tremendous potential. So for folks who don't understand patents, and again, I know U.S. patent law, a little bit of European, but essentially what it does is it gives you the right to be the sole person to do this for a period of time, 17 years, 20 years, depending on some rules, that sort of thing. The reason for it is when you get the patent, you have to tell everybody how you did, so what your process is. Now, the point of the patent system, I mean, it's actually in the American Constitution. The point of it was, we don't want a bunch of people holding secrets of how they figured out to do something, because that stifles innovation. So you tell the world, but for this period of time, you're the only one who's allowed to do it, and the government's going to stop anybody else from doing it. Wonderful thing. Unfortunately, in the 80s, probably around the late 80s, somebody managed to get a patent for what's called a process. So software before that couldn't be patented. You would copyright your software, but you couldn't patent it. Then they came up with this thing of it's an idea that's instantiated in software, and that became something you could get a patent on. That opened the door to millions and millions of, honestly, BS patents. I'm actually a patent holder of a BS patent. Amazon tried to patent one-click shopping. Somebody tried to patent the shopping cart. Wait. You're going to tell me that it's not obvious to, a skilled person in this field that we need a place for people to put things if they want to buy more than one thing from my website? This is not obvious? And that calling it a shopping cart in English is not obvious? I mean, it's insane. So what started to happen then is everybody started to rack up patents and sue each other, because you would get all of these nuisance lawsuits. So some, scum-sucking pig, bottom dweller, they actually hit Vivox up with you violated our patent on voice over IP. Well, there's tons of prior art. It was a crappy patent. It was overly broad. All of that sort of stuff is absolutely terrible. But in the end, it was cheaper to pay them off than to fight them legally. Now, Newegg I forget what patent they did, but the CTO and the chief counsel of Newegg, the tech shopping site, they got hit up with some stupid idiot who was, I have a patent on e-commerce, so I'm going to sue all these sites. And they said, look, we don't care if this costs us every cent we have. We're not going to buy you off. We are going to fight you on this. Apple did that when somebody said, oh, I have the patent on in-app upgrades. So you're playing the free version and you want the paid version, and you do it inside the app. I got a patent on that. I want everybody to pay me on it. And they started suing app developers. Apple stepped up and said, no, you're not. We are going to fight this. We're going to put the money behind it. We're still waiting for a verdict in that case. But, the big guys, so like the guys who sued Vivox, now they have a case behind them to say to a judge, oh, in this case,
we won this one.
Right. Yeah, these guys paid, so
right.
We're being reasonable. This is a reasonable patent. And they work their way up. So
do you think that this does this affect the MMO industry in a sense of like, does it affect the gamer at the end? Do you think that there's companies actually not putting mechanisms and things into their games because of patents that exist?
No. So what's starting to happen is you're getting nuisance lawsuits. So I know somebody who claimed a patent on the concept of a virtual world. Even though, in literature and things like that, this is stuff that's been described for decades. In the trade, it's what's called prior art. What game developers tend not to sweat patents very much. They don't tend to get involved in patent fights. And so they'll get hit by some of these, and the question is how hard do they fight them? Mm-hmm. A lot of these guys will go after things like porn sites or small players. In the game industry, a small player doesn't have that much money, so extorting the money from them isn't worth it. And the big guys are very rich. So it's, the distribution of companies isn't great for lawsuits. On the web, you have a lot more choices, so you can get somebody who's big enough to get decent money from to justify your legal costs, but not so big that they can put up a big fight. Now, the big news in the patent system is yesterday or the day before, in the U.S., President Obama came out with some executive orders that said, okay, this patent stuff is stupid. We all know it's stupid. Let's do some reasonable things. And so they're doing, he said they can't be overly broad, a bunch of other things that help settle this down. And then he had a whole list of legislative concepts that, when I say President Obama, it's probably somebody in the Congress Department that did all the work. But anyway, he had a list of legislative things that Congress has to take up and do. The problem with Congress is going to be everybody who's sitting on a big patent portfolio is going to have their lobbyists tell Congress not to do it because they have a competitive advantage. So, okay, somebody starts to do this, I can whack them with a lawsuit. Apple and Google can go back and forth with lawsuits for 1 billion years. Microsoft can do the same thing. Nathan Myhrvold, who used to be at Microsoft, he's got, I think I saw somewhere, 1,000 shell companies to hold and hide patents so he can sue people. It's ridiculous. So, so far, I haven't seen a lot of terrible stuff in the game sector, but as you can tell by how riled up I am about this, it's something I'm watching, and it's stupid, and hopefully it'll go away.
Hope so. All right, we got some more questions, but first I want to tell you guys about a great tip we got going on with Audible right now. If you guys have not checked out Audible, now is your chance. I want you to check it out free for 30 days and get a free audiobook. That's right. Just use the URL audible.com/gamebreaker. Just go to that URL. You gotta sign up with that URL. You're going to get it free for 30 days, and you're going to get to choose one free audio book. And for all you MMOers out there, there's tons of great stuff. There's World of Warcraft books on there, Star Wars, The Old Republic books. The Neverwinter series is on there, which is awesome. Yeah, the World of Warcraft books are phenomenal as well. So there's a few there. Storm Rage is on there, and Tides of War, Wolfheart, they're all on there. Go check it out. Go to audible.com/gamebreaker. Use the URL, sign up, make an account, download the app, put it on your iPhone, Android, iPad, whatever you got. I keep it on my iPad and my iPhone. Usually what I do when I'm going to sleep or I'm driving my car. I listen to a lot of audiobooks while I'm driving in the car.
No, you live in LA. You're in traffic most of the time.
In traffic all the time. God, Game of Thrones is like 39 hours.
Exactly. No. You know, and for everybody watching out there, if you've got a friend, if you got a Twitter account, send the URL out. I mean, for all the great stuff Gary does and putting the network together, the man's got to eat.
The man's got to eat. Look at his chub. The man's got it.
You check it out. Instead of /Gamebreaker, it should be /Gary's got to eat.
/Gary's got to eat. That's it. Go over to audible.com/Gamebreaker. Sign up for your free 30-day trial today and get your free audiobook. You could be listening in just minutes. All right, next up, this one from Angelo. Angelo says, hey, Monty. I am Angelo, and I watched most of your shows in Gamebreaker TV with great interest. He says, I am 32 years old, and I'm from Greece. I studied architecture in the UK and worked there as an architect assistant from 2007 to 2010. I lost my job in Liverpool, and from 2010, I can't find a job in the architecture industry. That's unfortunate. He says, I have great knowledge of MMO gaming. I played everything from Dark Age of Camelot until the latest great MMO title released as Guild Wars 2, and I am wondering to turn my interest into MMO gaming. I also have a blog for MMO games. It is metropolismmogaming.com. See, there's a smart there. He's smart already.
Some brains.
There you go. He dropped his URL in there and I immediately plugged it. It's metropolismmogaming.com. So that's his blog. From Otherside, he says, I have no knowledge in programming and also artist as freehand drawing isn't my thing either. He says, what advice can you give me? So an architect, out of our work architect, big MMO gamer, got a blog, got his plugin. But what?
So there's a few things there. One thing I will say, Angelo, is 2010 with the economic downturn, everybody stops building. It kills the whole architecture business. In fact, if you look at economic downturns, if you watch architects, when their business slows down, it happens a couple of quarters before a recession is actually visible to the rest of the people. So they're indicators. Now, this year, things are starting to come out in a decent way. So keep your eyes open. Don't give up hope. There may be architecture jobs out there for you. But for game design stuff, there's a couple of things for you to look at. There is architecture in games, and so there are some games, certain titles where the environment art or some of the concepts of what this is, what the flow is, what good architecture, has taught you, can be useful things and worth trying and looking at. You fall into more of an environmental, an environment arts sort of category there. So you don't have to freehand draw, but and you've probably done this in architecture school where you're building 3D renderings of buildings and walkthroughs and things like that. You're trying to do it in a different set of tools, which would be a little more polished. The other thing is to look at what other skills you have that translate to straight business. So if your blog is doing well, there may be a marketing role for you. There may be a role in community. There may be other things like that for you to try out. And when you do that, you can step into a role that doesn't necessarily have to be, QA tester, entry level. There are some mid-tier entry points. A few episodes ago, we had Linda Carlson on from Sony Online. So Linda did a whole bunch of things from being a professional GOAT judge to being a journalist to being the head of community at SOE. And so, there's lots of ways to move around.
Keep an eye out, keep your chin up. Monty Sharma, follow him on the Twitter at Monster, MONTSTER27. And of course, if you have questions for Monty, you can send those over to Monty at Gamebreaker.tv. That is the email address to use. Always a pleasure, sir.
It's been fun, Gary.
You can follow me on Twitter at Gary Ginn and follow Gamebreaker TV at Gamebreaker TV. And check out our new site. We have a brand new website, freetoplay.tv. T-O, not the number 2. freetoplay.tv. Brand new website we just launched, part of the Gamebreaker network, and we're really excited about it. So check it out. If you're looking for a free-to-play MMO, that's the place to go. Wow, I just came up with a jingle right there. Live. Probably had to pay something like $1 million for that. I just came up with it. Have a great week. We'll see you next week for some more Monty's Minute.